Hello, lovers of scary stories. Today I want to share with you one very unusual and terrifying tale. It's quite long, but incredibly engaging. So get ready, make yourselves comfortable, and enjoy. Pleasant viewing. Have you ever had a job that felt wrong? Not just wrong in the usual sense, when you drag yourself out of bed, muttering about your salary or your boss, but the kind of wrong that seeps into your bones, makes your skin itch, and causes something deep inside to whisper, "You don't belong here." That's exactly the kind of job I have. I work alone as a lighthouse keeper at a place called Black Ratch Point. You've probably never heard of it, and honestly, that's for the best. It doesn't appear on any popular maps. Tourists never wander here. Even the locals pretend it doesn't exist. And you know what? They're right. Because Black Ratch Point feels like it was never meant to exist at all. As if the land itself regretted allowing it to come into being. Normally, a lighthouse exists to guide ships safely, to keep them from crashing against the rocks or getting lost at sea. That's what I thought when I accepted this position. I believed I'd be doing something good, useful, maybe even noble. But here, at this lighthouse, the light doesn't guide anyone. It contains something. It keeps something locked inside. The beam isn't an invitation. It's a warning. And tonight is not like the others. Tonight I found something I was never meant to find. I wasn't looking for anything unusual when I came across it. It was just a routine night shift, one of hundreds I've spent in this cold, salt-eaten tower that groans with every gust of wind. After 2 years, I should have gotten used to everything by now. But this place always keeps something in reserve, waiting until the exact moment you begin to feel safe. That night, I decided to tidy up the storage room, just to break the endless silence. The room was packed with forgotten junk, cracked lanterns, rusted tools, thick instruction manuals no one had opened in decades. It smelled of mold, old wood, and something else, something sharp that made my throat burn. I was moving a stack of old logbooks left behind by previous keepers when I saw it. A brittle, yellowed sheet of paper wedged between the back wall and a shelf. I pulled it free. The paper crackled beneath my fingers. No title. No signature. Just 7 rules, scratched out in a shaky hand, as if the person who wrote them hadn't slept for weeks. And those rules didn't feel like something someone made up for fun. They felt real. Earned. Suffered through. Lock the door at exactly 11 p.m. If you hear knocking after that, do not open it. Whoever you hope to see will never knock. That was the first line. Simple, but it sent chills down my spine. The light must remain on at all times. If it goes out, you must turn it back on immediately, even if you have to go outside. My heart skipped. I'd done that before, gone outside during storms when the power failed. I thought it was normal. Just part of the job. After midnight, do not look at the water. If you hear someone calling your name, it is lying. If the water tries to speak to you, stay silent and do not answer. My breath caught in my chest. I remembered a night when I thought I heard someone shouting from the rocks. I'd almost responded. If you see a person standing at the edge of the cliff, do not acknowledge them. Do not speak. Do not approach. Cold sweat spread across my back. I had seen someone, just weeks ago. I'd told myself it was a trick of the light. You must leave at exactly 4 a.m. Not a minute earlier. Not a minute later. I usually left around 4, but never exactly on the dot. I hadn't known it mattered. Maybe it does. When thick fog rolls in, do not look out the window. You may see something you were never meant to see. I thought of the nights when the fog was so dense I couldn't see my own hand in front of my face. I used to stare out the window just to feel less alone. Every new moon, the ship will return. Do not acknowledge it. Do not try to stop it. Do not look at it. That rule hit me the hardest. I had never seen a ship, but tonight, only a thin silver crescent of the moon hung in the sky. The new moon was approaching. I stood there, staring at the list. My hands trembled as I gripped the edges of the paper. The air felt heavier, as if the room itself were holding its breath. At first, I laughed, a weak, shaky laugh. I told myself it was just a joke from a previous keeper. Some creepy tradition meant to scare the newcomer. But the longer I held that paper, the louder the silence became. As if the entire lighthouse was watching me. And deep down, I understood something. This wasn't just a warning left behind. It was a challenge. A test. And without realizing it, I had already been following some of the rules. I was already playing the game. Whether I wanted to or not. I tried to distract myself. I really did. I paced back and forth across the main floor of the lighthouse, picked up a dusty book from a side table, flipped through the pages without seeing a single word. I even turned on a small battery-powered radio, hoping to catch some faint station from the mainland, but there was nothing but static. And the whole time, my hands wouldn't stop shaking. They trembled as if I'd been standing out in the cold for too long. Even though the thick stone walls of the lighthouse kept the wind out completely. It wasn't cold. It was fear. Cold, quiet, creeping fear. The first rule seemed simple when I read it. Lock the door at exactly 11 p.m. Easy, right? Just turn the key and walk away. So I did. I went down to the heavy iron door at the base of the spiral staircase and turned the lock. Then I turned it again, just to be sure. The metal creaked in protest, as if it didn't want to be locked. That should have been my first clue. And then, at exactly 11:03 p.m., I heard it. Knocking. 3 slow, deliberate knocks. Then silence. The kind of silence that presses against your ears, waiting to see what you'll do. I froze, eyes wide. I hadn't expected it to actually happen. I couldn't even remember hearing knocking before this night. But now, listening, really listening, something clicked. I had heard it before. Maybe unconsciously, but deep in my mind, the sound was buried there, like a memory that didn't truly belong to me. And suddenly I understood. It happened every night. I just hadn't noticed. Or maybe, I hadn't wanted to. I stepped away from the door. The lighthouse stood on a cliff. No one could just wander up here. A narrow path led from the shore, and the rocks below were sharp and unforgiving. Anyone climbing that path would be heard, their footsteps would echo. But tonight, there were no footsteps. Then. Hey. The voice hit me like a slap. Male. Low. Rough. Like it hadn't been used in a long time. But something about it was wrong. Like a song sung by someone who knows all the words but none of the meaning. Too steady. Too careful. I think I'm lost, the voice said. I didn't move. My jaw clenched so hard it ached. I stared at the door as if it might reach out and grab me. Lost. Out here. At night. It made no sense. And yet, I was certain of one thing. That voice did not belong to this place. Please, it said again, softer now, trying to sound weak. I don't have much time. You need to let me in. I almost did. Almost. Something inside me stirred, an instinct, a reflex. That old human habit of helping someone in need. Then my eyes fell on the piece of paper stuffed into my jacket pocket. Rule number 1. Do not open the door. My fingers tightened in the fabric of my coat. I stepped back. The voice continued, begging, pleading, insisting. Each word more convincing than the last. It tried fear. Then kindness. Then anger. But I stayed still. I kept my mouth shut. And then, without warning, the voice stopped. Silence. Not even a breath. Then footsteps. But not the kind that echo on a stone path. No crunch of gravel. No rustle of brush. Just a soft, steady rhythm. As if feet were stepping on empty air. They didn't go back down the path. They didn't fade into the forest. They simply walked into the absolute darkness beyond the lighthouse. A darkness that stretched out like an endless sea of nothingness. I didn't breathe. Then something slid under the door. A soft scraping sound, like paper dragged across stone. I stared at the gap beneath the door. A sheet of paper. Blood-soaked, not just stained, but saturated with dark, rust-brown blotches. I hesitated. My fingers hovered over it, unwilling to touch it. It could have been a trick. A trap. But leaving it there felt worse. So, carefully, I picked it up. The edges were sticky. The smell was metallic, sharp, nauseating. I slowly unfolded it. There were words. Shaking, handwritten lines, just like the rules, but smaller, messier, harder to read. I started to read. I didn't get far. The moment my eyes reached the second line, the light flickered. Not softly. Not gently. A sharp failure. On. Off. On. And for the first time that night, I knew I wasn't alone. I looked at my watch. 12 a.m. Midnight. The instant my eyes registered the time, the lighthouse light, my only real protection from whatever nightmare's black ratch point was hiding, flickered again. Once. Then again. 1. 2. And then. Darkness. The beam that usually swept steadily across the black ocean simply vanished. Gone. No warning. No dying hum. Just, off. And in that moment, something deep inside me understood. This isn't just a malfunction. This is wrong. The second rule. I remembered it clearly now. The light must remain on at all times. If the light flickers, you must immediately turn it back on. Even if that means going outside. A jolt of icy panic stabbed through my chest. My throat tightened. My heart began hammering so fast it felt like it might break through my ribs. I groped across the nearest table for my flashlight, grabbed it with shaking hands, and sprinted for the stairs. The old spiral steps groaned beneath my feet as I rushed upward toward the lantern room. Halfway up, the cold hit me. Not the ordinary chill of sea air, this was different. Wrong. By the time I reached the top, I could see my breath. Thick white clouds poured from my mouth like smoke from a fire. My fingers were already numb. The metal railing burned my skin like ice. Then the light above me dimmed to a weak glow, and went out. Everything was swallowed by darkness. Complete, absolute darkness. I switched on the flashlight. A thin yellow beam cut through the room like a knife, trembling along with my hand. I aimed it at the generator. My heart pounded so hard its rhythm drowned out the wind outside. I flipped the main switch. Nothing. No spark. No hum. Nothing. My breath caught. I moved toward the backup generator. Hope clung to me like a life preserver. Then something stopped me. Not a sound. Not a touch. Just a feeling. That crawling, skin-tightening certainty that you're being watched, that someone is there. And then I saw it, out of the corner of my eye. Something stood outside, perfectly still, right at the edge of the cliff, where the light never quite reached. It wasn't a person. It looked like a person, the way something might if you squinted from far away and had never seen a human before. A shape. A silhouette. But something was wrong. Too tall. Too thin. Its arms hung down far too long, twisting my stomach with dread. And where a face should have been there was only a blurred mass of roiling darkness, no eyes, no mouth, just the suggestion of a head, swirling like smoke trapped in a jar. It didn't move. It simply stood there, watching. Watching me, or maybe the lighthouse. Either way, the message was clear. The light was out. And it was waiting. I turned back to the generator. My hands barely obeyed me, stiff with cold. They slipped off the controls again and again before I finally managed to grip the ignition switch. I glanced over my shoulder. The figure took a step forward. Panic exploded inside me. I slammed my palm down on the ignition. Come on, come on, come on. With a violent roar, the generator coughed, sputtered, and finally thundered to life. The light above me flared, not flickered. It blazed, slicing through the foggy night like a sword of fire. The room filled with warm, blinding radiance. I spun around and looked back toward the cliff. Gone. The figure had vanished. No trace. No imprint. No whisper on the wind. Just the night. And that damned, endless sea. What was that? I whispered, as if saying it aloud would make it real. My heart slammed wildly in my chest, loud and uneven like a warning drum. My thoughts raced in circles, refusing to settle. Every passing second made the silence heavier, as if it were pressing down on my lungs. I tried to distract myself, clumsily jumping from one unfinished task to another. I checked oil levels, adjusted the beam, wiped down already clean surfaces, anything to keep my hands busy and my mind occupied. But no matter what I did, the sharp edge of unease only grew stronger. People don't take lighthouse jobs for fun. No one dreams of spending months in isolation in a cold, creaking tower by the sea, cut off from the world. You don't wake up one day and say, I want to be alone with foghorns and salt spray. No. You end up here because you're running. Hiding. Trying to survive. My reason was simple. I had nothing left. Nothing to hold me in the world I once called home. I grew up in a small, quiet town on the edge of a reservation, a place where stories lingered in the air and people still nodded toward the unseen. My grandfather was a proud, weathered old man who had lived through too much and spoken too little. He used to sit by the fire and tell stories that sounded more like warnings than fairy tales. He spoke of spirits that didn't stay dead. Of voices calling from the water. Of fog that carried more than just moisture. As a boy, I dismissed it all. I thought it was just culture, stories meant to scare kids into behaving. Then came the accident. My wife. My little son. Gone. One rainy night. A slick highway. And then, nothing. After that, everything my grandfather had said sounded less like myth and more like memory. All I wanted was to disappear. To stop hearing the echo of toys no one played with anymore. To stop seeing her mug in the cupboard and his shoes by the door. I needed silence. Distance. Emptiness. So when the job at Blackridge Lighthouse came up, I took it without hesitation. The pay was good, the requirements were few, and best of all, no one asked questions. But now I'm starting to wonder. Did I choose this place? Or did it choose me? I tried to shake the thoughts away. Told myself I was just tired, that grief does strange things to the mind. I sat down again with my coffee. The cup rattled in my hand. Then the old floor clock chimed 12:30. And I heard the voice. Hey, I called out, more out of habit than hope. Every hair on my arm stood on end. The voice came from outside, near the water. And it spoke my name. Clear. Soft. Familiar. My entire body tensed. My mouth went dry. Rule number 3 of the Black Ridge Keeper's Guide. After midnight, do not look at the water. At first, I'd laughed at the rules. Treated them like some strange initiation prank when I first arrived. But I had followed them, every single one, because that voice wasn't just a voice. It was my mother's voice. And she'd been dead for 10 years. No. No. No, I whispered. But even as I said it, my legs began to move, like they didn't care about the rules, like they belonged to someone else. I walked toward the small round window, the one with the perfect view of the sea. I didn't realize I was crying until the salt of my tears burned the corners of my mouth. "Come here," the voice said softly. "Please. I need you." It was her. The way she used to call me when dinner was ready. The way she soothed me after nightmares. My hands gripped the windowsill. My knees locked. My brain screamed don't, but my heart whispered what if? Then I saw it. The water wasn't calm. It was moving, twitching, almost panicked. Something wasn't rising through the water. It was pushing it away. The sea churned and recoiled in slow, hesitant waves, as if it wanted nothing to do with what was emerging from below. I couldn't breathe. It began to take shape. Not a man. Not a woman. Not any creature I had ever seen or read about. A living form, wrong, impossible. It did not belong in this world. "No, no, what the hell is that?" I whispered, my voice breaking. For the first time in my life, I understood that water, the thing we need to live, the thing that brings peace and calm, can be terrifying. Oh God. My survival instincts kicked in, fast and brutal. My eyes slammed shut without my permission. And then, scraping. Right against the glass. Slow. Deliberate. Like fingernails, one after another. I froze. Didn't breathe. The only sound was blood pounding in my ears. Then silence. No voice. No whisper. When I finally dared to open my eyes, the window was fogged with thick condensation. And written clearly across the glass were the words, "Do not break the rules." By then, I was shattered, completely hollow, inside and out. My nerves felt like exposed wires, sparking at every sound. My fingers wouldn't stop shaking, even clenched into fists. My chest felt tight, as if something heavy had settled inside and refused to move. I told myself that if I could just make it to morning, everything would be fine. Maybe this would all feel like a dream, some twisted, horrible nightmare. I just had to endure. But my body no longer believed my thoughts. I was exhausted. And I was afraid in a way no person should ever have to be afraid. I don't even remember how the hours passed after what happened at the window. One moment it was just past midnight, then suddenly it was nearly 4. My mind stopped tracking time, as if it knew it didn't want to be awake for what came next. At 3:45, the world changed again. It started with a smell, wet and heavy, like rotting seaweed and soaked ropes. Then came the fog. Thick. Far too thick. It rolled in as if it had a mind of its own, wrapping the lighthouse in heavy blankets. I could barely see the edge of my own desk. This wasn't the kind of fog that simply obscures vision. It swallowed sound. Everything became muffled, muted, quiet. I tried not to look up. I truly tried. I kept my eyes on the floor, blinking rapidly, focusing on the pounding of my own heart. Then I heard it. Wood, old, cracking wood under pressure. Then another sound, metallic, low and hollow. It carried across the distance like a bell being swung by an unseen hand. A ship's bell. I held my breath. Slowly, like a child hiding beneath a blanket, I turned my head just enough to look toward the window again. The fog was so dense I thought I wouldn't see anything. But then, faintly, like a memory rising from a deep sleep, I saw it. A ship. Barely visible, like a shadow caught in the mist. It glided across the surface of the ocean too smoothly, too silently, no splashes, no waves breaking against its hull. It didn't disturb the water at all. It simply moved, soundless, as if it were not part of the world as we know it. Its sails were torn, fluttering weakly like old cloth left to rot. The wood of the ship was cracked and bleached by time, and yet it held together, stubbornly refusing to sink. It was wrong. This ship did not belong to this time, or perhaps to any time at all. Then I saw the figures. They stood along the deck, motionless, watching. They looked like people, but they were no longer truly human. Some had no arms. One had no face, only smooth, pale skin stretched where features should have been. Several stood with their mouths open, wide and empty, their jaws hanging in endless silent screams. None of them made a sound. They just stared. Every single one of them was looking at the lighthouse. At me. I froze, unable to look away. My skin tightened, my legs went numb. I couldn't run. I couldn't even blink. Then one of them moved. It raised an arm, not in greeting, not in peace. It pointed directly at me. My stomach twisted, nausea rising. My mind screamed, demanding explanations. But deep down, far deeper than I wanted to look, I already knew. This wasn't some forgotten ghost story passed between drunken sailors. It was real. All of it, the rules, the whispers, the scratching at the window, the voice that sounded like my mother, the ship. It returned again and again and again. And now I understood why. The blood-stained paper I had found earlier that night, crumpled and hidden behind the beams, had been telling the truth. I hadn't understood it then. I hadn't wanted to. But now it all came together in perfect, horrible clarity. The last keeper had made a single mistake. Just one. He had let the lighthouse go dark, even if only for a minute. And in that minute, the sea took what it wanted. The ship had crashed. People had died. Now, every new moon, the ship returned, searching, yearning. Not for answers. For revenge. And if it couldn't find the one who failed, it took the one who came after. Me. My legs nearly gave out, but I caught myself on the table. I turned away from the window. I didn't want to see it vanish. I didn't want to watch those lifeless faces dissolve back into the fog. But I knew it had vanished back into the sea, for now. And something inside me whispered a truth I didn't want to say out loud: it would return. And next time, it might not leave empty-handed. I didn't allow myself to breathe again until my boots touched the damp stone outside the lighthouse at exactly 4 a.m. The moment I stepped into the open air, my lungs filled with sharp, icy cold that struck me like a slap. The sky was beginning to change. Not dawn yet. Not morning. Just that eerie shade of gray that makes everything feel uncertain. The fog still clung to everything, not as thick as before, but heavy enough to keep the world muted and distant. As if the fog didn't want to let go of the night. As if it wanted to keep me there a little longer. I slowly turned around. Behind me, the lighthouse stood tall and silent. Its golden rotating beam cut cleanly through the fog like a sword pushing back the darkness. It was steady, reliable, a symbol of safety for anyone at sea. But to me, it no longer felt like safety. It felt like a warning. I had done what I was told. I hadn't broken any rules. I kept the light burning, kept my eyes mostly where they were supposed to be, didn't listen too closely to voices I shouldn't hear. I survived the night. But at what cost, and for how long? I stood there, staring at the rotating light as if it might give me answers. For the past 2 years, I had told myself this place was peace. I told myself I had found refuge in the silence, in the isolation. I told myself I came here to escape after my life was torn apart. But what if that was never true? What if I didn't come here to run from something? What if I was called? The thought slid into my mind, slow, sickening. What if I wasn't hiding from pain, but being punished by it? Maybe this wasn't a job. Maybe it was a sentence. Maybe Blackridge didn't offer solitude. Maybe it offered a cage made of fog and regret, a place where people were sent to forever feel the echo of every mistake swallowed by the sea. And suddenly, one thing became painfully clear. It didn't matter how precisely I followed the rules. It didn't matter how devoted I was to the routine, how bright I kept the light, how quiet I kept my thoughts. One day, the lighthouse would not protect me. One day, I would not be allowed to leave. A short comment on the story. Honestly, I'm deeply impressed by this story, because it fits perfectly into my favorite type of horror. It's written in a very Lovecraftian style, and I absolutely love his works, especially everything connected to the sea and entities that the human mind cannot comprehend. The story also strongly reminded me of the film The Lighthouse starring Willem Dafoe and Robert Pattinson. It's a bit of an art house film, but if you enjoyed this story, I highly recommend checking it out as well. I think the author clearly drew inspiration from it. Overall, in my opinion, the story turned out fantastic. I hope you enjoyed it too. That's all from me for now. Thank you very much for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Until next time, everyone. Take care. Waving hand.